The issues that are in play, I think I'll just go straight into them with no further procedural introduction. I'm just going to try to light on the main concepts and controversies. And the first one is how much has been achieved by the system so far. Martin alluded to this. We have had an international drug control system for almost 100 years. That system for the first 90 years of its existence was pretty absolutely characterized by the faith in the fact that supply reduction measures, law enforcement, deterrence of drug use would eventually achieve a situation where there was no illegal drug use in the world. And that, I think most people looking at that now would probably say, well, how was that allowed to stay that way for so long? But that has been the objective and the faith of the international drug control system, at least until 1998. Now, of course, all sorts of people debated the wisdom of that at various points in history, but the UN system has been built around that idea. As Martin has said, various instruments since 1912 have sought the eradication of the use of key substances listed in the drug control conventions. And the last deadline was 1986. The 1961 convention was trying to remove illegal drug use from the world by 1986. Now, that went into the 1998 General Assembly special session, and there was a slogan about, many of you remember it, a drug-free world, we can do it. And the objectives in 1998 were the elimination or significant reduction of the cultivation of coca, opium, and cannabis. Clearly, 10 years later, one clear conclusion that nobody will argue with is we have not achieved that aim. So it has not been eliminated, and it has not been significantly reduced. So the first debate is how openly do various actors in this process want to acknowledge that reality. There are some advocates, some countries who want a very clear statement in the political declaration next year saying we have failed to significantly reduce these cultivations and use. It is unlikely that any political meeting at the UN acknowledges failure in that clear way. That's just not what political meetings do. The current battle is actually around whether the alternative analysis, which is coming from the UN agencies and many of the member states, is that, okay, we have not eradicated or significantly reduced, but what we have been able to do is contain the market. So the argument goes is we managed to contain illegal drug use to somewhere around 5% of the adult population of the world. That is almost certain to be an underestimate, but that's the best estimate the UN can come up with, whereas tobacco and alcohol use are up in 30–40% of the adult population of the world. They also state that over the last 10 years, it's hard to say that we've significantly reduced, but they do draw attention to the last 120 years and compare the current rates of opium use, or heroin use, for example, with rates of opium use in China in the late 19th, early 20th century. Hugely controversial analysis. My own organization and Martin's organization have, I think, probably pretty effectively destroyed their arguments. The second significant conceptual debate going on, and it's all related and interrelated, is about what are the nature of our objectives. As I've said, the drug control objectives that have dominated over a century and have only been slightly amended in the last 10 years, is that our objectives are all about, should be entirely about, the scale of the illegal drug market. So when you hear debates about harm reduction, that basically is a debate, one of these debates. Are we most interested in reducing the number of drug users, or are we most interested in reducing the health problems that those drug users entail? And in every debate, you'll have a group of people sat one side, military and enforcement people saying, give us more hardware, give us more power, and we will reduce the scale of cultivation or distribution. As I say, my view is they very rarely succeed, but that is a valid objective. And on the other side of the table is a group of people say, well, actually less important than how many hectares are cultivated is the health and social well-being of the citizens of that country and the action against the crime and corruption associated with that market. The European Union is generally the region of the world that is most comfortable and reasonably consensual between the 27 member states that we need to redress this balance. It is not good enough to just try to eradicate, reduce supply, take law enforcement approaches. We have to have a balance between that and our health approaches, our social development approaches, and our poverty reduction approaches. Probably more controversially and less supported by member states at the moment is the concept that not only is there a need for balance between the scale of the market and the consequences of the market, we have to bravely acknowledge that our policies and our actions also have negative consequences. There are things that what are referred to as unintended consequences of what we do. The fact of the matter is all the economic analyses that have been made by organised crime is that one of its three main sources of income is illicit drugs. Yeah? So one of the unintended consequences of enforcing the drug control system is we're making some very bad people very rich. Some of the things we do in our eagerness to enforce drug laws fall foul of human rights legislation, fall foul of rights to privacy, fall foul of rights to health, fall foul of sort of cohesive communities. And we create some real social problems just by the way we enforce our drug laws. And as referred to there, we create very big prison populations in many countries by doing that. Now, not only is that has unintended and negative consequences on the functioning of society, it also has negative consequences on state budgets. There are a lot of countries in the world really struggling to maintain cohesive criminal justice systems, a police system, an arrest and court system, and a prison system, because it's overburdened with arrests under the drug laws. There is a problem with UN system-wide cohesion when it comes to drug policy. The drug control system, or the Drug Control Agency, has real problems with coordinating its work with other UN agencies. There is very little coordination, for example, between the UN Office on Drugs and Crime and the human rights treaty bodies in Geneva. It's only down the road from Vienna. And until the NGOs, and I've got to take credit on behalf of many NGOs for this, until the NGOs started stimulating about a year ago that the human rights aspects of drug control needed some attention, the apparatus in Vienna, either the member states or the UN office, had paid very little attention to the need for cohesion between human rights treaty obligations and drug control obligations. Similar dynamic can be seen with the difficulties in combining the drug control aspects of UN operations and the poverty reduction and development aspects. UN Development Programme, World Bank, all these institutions didn't really have a big voice in Vienna in drug policy. Similarly with the health agencies, UNAIDS and WHO have been thrown together with UNODC over the last 10 years to try and work out a cohesive response to addiction treatment, mental health and HIV and AIDS. But it has been a difficult marriage. Yeah? So there are different UN agencies with different objectives that have struggled to have a cohesive, system-wide drug policy approach. Now, part of that is institutional, but part of that is political. And trying to improve that cohesion is one of the main objectives of the current review.